Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In this short video I'm going to show you what practical gap mean and how we can formulate it in our research. Practical gap is a real world problem. As you know that every researcher should solve partial part of a real world problem. What you call it, practical gap. So as a researcher, you have to start by investigating, scanning your environment to understand the problems within the community, the problems within organization. So the first step to conduct research is understanding a real world problem before formulating research topic. One mistake by researcher is they start by formulating their research topic and they strive to search real world problem for their topic. But the correct way is first understanding problem within the community, understanding problem within the environment, and then formulate topic for that problem. So as a researcher, you have to solve partial parts of the problem within your environment or within your organization. For example, there are different types of practical gap or problems. For instance, we will observe small business serving in your organization, in your community or in your organization will struggle to use a digital platform effectively because of different challenges like lack of sufficient structure, lack of sufficient skill and training. Or you may observe that farmers in your community are claiming that they have lack of access to market information and they sold their product with low price because of this lack of sufficient market information, and so on. So by observing your environment, by scanning the environment, you can understand the real world problem. You can understand gap in the environment. It is called practical gap. This practical gap has some characteristics. For example, it is real world relevance. Practical gap is real world relevance, means it deals with real life issues, not just about academic issues. In the case of practical gap, you state about real life issues, not about theoretical gap, is knowledge gap, empirical gap, and so on. And also observed through practice. This practical gap is usually identified through reports, industry observation, expert feedback, or user experience. So you gather those practical gaps by observing the environment, not by reading and searching literatures. And also this practical gap is actionable. Actionable means research that address practical gap usually provide solution, strategies, improvement strategies, and recommendations that can solve or that can minimize the real world problem. And also this practical gap serves as bridge theory and practice. Now let me show you how you can state practical gap in your study. This is a sample for practical gap. This is state about the utilization of customers for digital banking. So it starts by positive statement. Despite the growing global shift towards digital payment system, the annual reports of Jamal Bank annual reports documented on 2024 indicates that significant underutilization of digital payment service by customers. It is a practical gap. The researcher collects this information by reading annual report of Jamal Bank. So it clearly states that customers are not sufficiently utilizing digital payment service in this globalization era, in this digitalization era. So it starts first by discussing the positive statement. This is the digitalization era. However, Annual report of the bank shows that customers are not sufficiently using the bank's digital payment system. And also at that, the report highlights that substantial portion of transactions are still conducted through traditional banking method. Customers are using still branch service, cash withdrawal from ATM, and so on. So from this report you can understand that in real world digital payment system is underutilized. Furthermore, you can add that the data shows that only 35% of account holders in Jamal Bank are actively use the bank mobile or internet banking platform or digital payment systems. And also less than 20% of merchants have integrated POS machine or QR code payment system. So this indicates a clear disconnect between availability of digital service and the actual usage pattern among customers. So now you can state your practical gap in this way. The practical gaps are those problems or gaps you have observed in the real world. You can gather those practical problems from annual report, from news, from expert feedbacks, and also from your own observation. In the next video, I will present about theoretical gap, knowledge gap, and empirical gap. Thank you.